Welcome to our 16th video. In this one, we're going to be looking at the materials editor. The material editor is how we actually make our objects look different colors, different materials, etc. For this, we're going to use a thing called nodes. And so if I go down to the timeline, I'm going to just open up a little bit. Pull down so I get two of them. I'm going to make the timeline on the very bottom there just kind of small. I'm going to expand this one up a bit, and I'm going to change this to the node editor. And of course right now I don't see anything in here, which is fine. But if I go and click on use nodes, I will now see the nodes for this material. Now if I change the color of this material, I won't see anything happen in that view. If I go to where it says material, I will see the material colors there. If I go to render, so if I do Shift Z, now I'm seeing it as rendered. Okay, so I'm going to hit Z again. Couple times just to get back into the shaded mode, or I could just then Shift Z back to shaded mode. I'm going to go ahead and change this type here. So if I do, let's say Shift A inside the node editor, I can go to where I have texture, for instance. So let's say we use a brick texture. I'm going to click on it. Pull this back. I'm going to do Shift A again, and I'm going to go and do let's do I already have one that's some different colors. Oh, that's okay. We'll go ahead and do checker texture. They're kind of a little similar there, right? And I'm going to take color down to this spot, and you could add in different things. Basically, yellow dots go to yellow dots. And this side over here, the left side is the inputs, the right side is the outputs. So you don't connect inputs to inputs, it wouldn't work that way. But if I do Shift A again, I could go to input and I could select RGB, and I could do a color input here and a color input down on this one. And now the thing is, I'm not seeing it change here at all. If I go to, again, to material, I'm still not seeing any change there at all. And let's see what it looks like when rendered. So I'm going to do Shift Z, and I just have a big black blob there. Okay, so whatever my settings are, for some reason, it's just not entirely happy with whatever I put together there. And let's say I take this input, I'm going to take the checkered, put it into the surface there, and so right now really all that's affecting this are these two things, but I just have a color going to a surface. That doesn't work. I need a green dot going to the green dot, so I'm going to disconnect this from here. Disconnect this. I'm going to move that right over here. Pop that in. Now I do have that, and I also have this in the not the texture. Sorry, I want materials. So I can also see it in materials. So Shift Z to see it as rendered, and those are pretty close together. So anyway, that is a way of kind of combining those things. I'm going to go ahead and pop this one right over it. So now I have the brick going inside, with this being those first colors. Maybe I want this to control the mortar color in between. Maybe I want that to be a blue. You can play around with a lot of different settings here. There's also a thing that says displacement. I could take this, pop it over into displacement. You can just move that up. The wires will move with it. Zoom out, zoom in as you want. And you can get some very interesting patterns or things going on here. Can be kind of fun to play with. Let's go ahead and add another light to the scene. So I'm going to add a, under lamp, I'm going to go ahead and add a, let's do a Hemi. And Hemis I can rotate even though I don't see it on here. I can change the direction that it's coming at the scene from. I'll go ahead and leave that like so. And you can see on here that it looks like this is raised a little bit around the things, and part of that, I'm going to right click on it again, is because I did this displacement. And so as I change things on these, and actually I didn't see much changing, come back to that later. Well, I'll see stuff change there too for roughness. Let's take this object. I'm actually just going to do Shift D to duplicate it. And I am working in cycles render, so I'm making it work a little bit harder in doing this. I'm going to add a material, and I'm going to click on New, although I could click on this and do Material there, and it says, okay, you got 3 instances of this. 1 on this one, 1 on this, and then 2 on this one now. Okay. If I click this number, it'll add a dot series saying, okay, this one is different from the other ones, but that's where it came from originally. I could rename this. Let's call this Experiment. Okay. Not that we aren't experimenting with it anyway. I could change some things here. So for instance, this diffuse is what's connecting there. I go here, let's say I choose glossy. Well, this is now glossy. It's still getting data from these other ones that it's working with. And it's still taking like some of those textures and stuff. So let's say I take this away. I'm going to take color. I'm going to put it directly into that one. But I still don't see any changes. And that's because I don't have that texture applied. So if I tab into this, let's go to Shift Z to look at it in edit mode. Interesting, this guy is spread out now as I open that up. I'm going to do A to select all. I'm going to go and say assign. So I assign that material to this. Now, if I tab out and if I hit Shift Z, I can see that material, and we can actually go to here where it says glossy roughness is kind of high. If I take that down, it should be a little bit more reflective, and I can see that it's actually reflecting the other object in it in my little like odd checker pattern thing going on there. Let's pull this one out here like so. And we're going to take away the factor there. And so right now I have glossy, goes to surface, and I have this color. And so I shouldn't see on this one. Oh, actually it was this one that I changed. That's, of course, because I rotated it around. That's silly me. So now I can see it there. I'm going to go ahead and change its color a little bit. So click on this guy. And let's say I go back down to this one. I don't see this in the background very well because it's matching the colors, whereas if I darken it up a little bit, then I get that. If I add some roughness, then that will diffuse the other object a little bit as I look at it. But I could do that. We could even do, I could change it there, or I could just click on this, hit delete, and I'm going to delete all those things. I could do Shift A, and let's go to where it says material, or shader in this case. We are working with materials, but we can go to glass. So I'm going to bring this in. Okay, it's got a white color for the glass. It's got lots of factors there. As I go through, you can see how it's doing like odd things with where it lines up, looking through it transparently. Let's take this world and let's change it a little bit. So I'm going to go to the world icon here. I'm going to go to the world icon there. I'm going to say use nodes. And then rather than background, I'm just going to change it over here because we can do that pretty easy. I'm going to use a I actually don't see the one that I want. It's down here on the list. And I still don't see the one that I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to do Shift A. And I'm going to go to where it says texture. I'm going to go to sky texture. And I'm going to take that to surface, although that said I should actually have that background in there. So I'm going to do Shift A. I'm going to go to where it says shader. We're going to do background. Click that in. Put this one in here. Put this one there. Okay, now I have something with a little bit of a horizon, and I have my odd shape here. Yeah, it's reflecting parts of this, and I can adjust, go back to material or objects, to our object here. Let's see. There we go. And now I can look at this and I can start to see how different things. So this is the index of refraction. So you can actually look up the index for different materials. Air is 1. So if I click in here, type 1, hit enter, I should get nothing really noticeable about where things are. Just made an invisible object. And then as we start to move it up, I'll notice that it's changing and bending light a little bit in different ways. And so you can simulate some materials that way. So this can get very complex using the materials. And you can also, if I go into shaded mode here, I'm going to tab in, you can apply materials to different panels. So for instance, like if I take those two, I click on this top one and say assign, then I can see when I do Shift Z, or if I go and want to see what they actually look like in colors, I can click on material here. Okay, and it's going to be faster than rendered view, of course, because it's not shading it and stuff. But it's a fast way to look at it. Here I have two solid panels, so they don't act like the glass does. And I can do that way. So you can have multiple shapes in a model with different materials. If for some reason your life is not complete without being able to see materials shaded in shaded mode, which works in Blender Render that way, you can go down on the list until you get to, I'm going to close that out, settings, and you can say viewport color. And you can use this to organize things. So if I say, okay, I want you to show up in viewport color that way, I don't think the alpha channel stuff works. So for instance, if I click on this shader, I go down and I say, okay, viewport color, yeah, that's fine. But let's say I want the alpha channel to be like, lower. To me, that says it should go somewhat transparent. And I don't see that there. I know that I can simulate that in the gaming mode by turning on some of the additional features that would appear over here, but I don't think that they appear for my mesh display. And so interesting. So yeah, so I don't think there's actually something that I can turn on in here to enable transparency right now. I'm not sure what that is, because to me it seems to imply that you could, but obviously it's not going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and minimize those settings. We get really complicated with materials. You can combine materials. So for instance, maybe you want something to be slightly transparent, but you want it to be glossy too. You could do Shift A, and you can add a shader. This one, let's say glossy, because I have glass there already. And I'm going to hook, well actually, there's only one surface, so I'm going to do Shift A. I'm going to go to where it has shader, mix shader, put this right in between them, plug both the shaders in, and then I can use this to blend between them. Shift Z to open up the renderer,